So, yesterday we saw what is a virtual network. Okay, we'll go through it again.
Yes.
Where is that topic? Virtual network. Okay. So, virtual networks, if we talk about Azure Virtual Networks, Azure Virtual Networks or networking. So, Azure Virtual Network is in an isolated boundary. So, that isolated boundary will be a subscription. Is a subscription which acts as a isolated boundary. Isolated boundary for VNet. Now inside this there may be a, you can say, resource group, and there may be inside virtual network there are regional boundaries, and inside that regional boundaries are those resource group only, and inside that we have a subnet. We have our subnet. Subnet. This is VNet, and then there is a subnet. Now inside this subnet, I created a machine, a virtual machine. This virtual machine is having now this is NIC. Okay, inside the subnet there's a virtual machine, and virtual machine is having a NIC, network interface card. Okay, this is NIC. Now each one of your laptop or a desktop is having an NIC. So if you have seen a desktop or a CPU, that cabinet, if you opened it, this is a system or a CPU, you say. So this is a CPU, that cabinet of desktop. And there's a port here. There's a port, which is a networking port. And somewhere this port inside there is a chip, or you can say a small board, which is NIC. How many of you have seen this inside us? That CPU board. So yeah, inside the computer where you attach the LAN cable. So here you attach the LAN cable.
Okay.
Yeah, in this socket you attach the LAN cable, which is provided by The network is provided by network provider, any network provider, you can say. Different network providers in every country, Airtel or some other network provider. So you attach a LAN cable, your connection is coming to your house, and using a router, you attach a LAN cable to your system. This system is having a NIC, Network Interface Card. Now this NIC, so here we have a VNet. Now yesterday I told you that VNet is all about IP spaces, right? So if I tell you, this provides you IP spaces, number of IP spaces, and those IP spaces, let me show you here. Portal.azure. Now this is my test resource book. Here, as we created a VM, with that particular VM, there was a VNet created, virtual network. Okay. And if I see the address space, see, this is the address space. So now, by default, there are two things in the IP spaces. In the IP space, there are public IPs, and also there are private IPs. Now, this is a personal choice. This is not by default. Public IP is not default. It will not created by default. Okay. Private IP is created by default. So you will get a private IP by default. Now I get the private IP by default. That's why you see here, it started, the address space started with 10. I told you yesterday for class A, B, C. Okay, so there is a, if I open that again, the last one, this one. So we have seen here, we have seen in an open network, class A starts from 0.0.0 till 127. Now for private IP, it is taken from here only and it starts with 10. Now you can see here in the practical, okay, there's a VNet created for virtual machine and it started with 10. Right? And the address range is 10.0.0.0 till 10.0.255.255, and the address counts are 65,536. That many addresses can be accommodated within this range. Okay. So, and the address range you define can be public or private, but public is not by default. You choose to create a public IP, but the private IP is default. That's why it started with 10. Now, if I come to subnet, so if I tell you here, this is a subnet. Now, this subnet will be divided into some range. Now, yesterday I told you in class A, if there is an IP, right? So say 10.0.0.0, right? So first one is for network portion. First one is the network portion. Rest are the hosts. So starting from 10, it moves to the network. Okay. So network number 10. So if I say I'm putting 10.0.0.0. So what it will do? It will go to the network. Which network? 10th network. So this will go to the network, and this network is 10 here. 10. Rest all are host. So this part here is network. These part are host. Network, host. So it will find the host. Which host? Now this IP may be 10.0.255.255. Now this is the last one. If I see that subnet, if I see that, see 10. So I've not taken this one 55 because in our VNet, which is created for the virtual machine, it is taken from 10.0.0/16, means 16 portions of that IP has been used in this virtual network. And from that 16 part, it is taken 10 dot, let me see again, in that space 10.0.0.0 till 10.0.255.255, and 16 portions are taken. And by this 16 portions, the address counts are coming to be 65,536. So what it will do? It will go inside this 10th network. And now remember that yesterday I told you that there is a multicasting and broadcasting. So there are 5 IPs. There are 5 IPs which are reserved. Okay. There are 5 IPs which are reserved. And those IPs are 0.0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Okay. Now this 0.2 and 0.3 are reserved for NIC. Now, if you have seen somewhere any IP, maybe 192.168.0.1. So when we you can say install our router. So for router, we take this address 192.168.0.1. Anyone have done this? Anyone have set up his or her router at home?
Yes.
So when you set up your router, you set some settings in that WAN network. So you log into the router by doing 192.168.0.1. Admin is the password for that router.
Yes.
Okay. Admin is the username, admin is the password. So you log into the router and you set the priorities, or you set the rules for your router, right? How many connections can be done from that router? 1 connection, 2 connection, 3 connection. So see, that one is assigned to the NIC of that router. So every system, may it be a virtual machine, may it be a router, which is connected to any network, must be having an NIC, network interface card, because without network interface card, you cannot connect to the network. So by default, 0.0123 are for system use, and there's one more 0.255. This is for broadcasting. Now, government and defense, all these entities use .255, and that is for broadcasting. So they broadcast, if they want to do some broadcasting, maybe some of government channels, maybe news channels or a government news channel, they will be using. Then if some say our prime minister, he needs to give some message, so he'll be needing some broadcasting network for that. So in that purposes, for special purposes, they use this for, so this is reserved. Okay, this is reserved. In case these all are reserved. Point 255. 255. So these all are reserved. Now, if I go here in my virtual network, this is the range. Then if I go to subnet, see, in my subnet, now in address space, it is provided me in the address space 16 portions. So I can use 16 portions of that. Now, because I'm creating a subnet, and I can create different subnets. This is subnet 1, this is subnet 2, this is subnet 2. Here maybe there is a subnet 3. So I can create different subnets inside a virtual network. Subnet 2, subnet 3. So what I have to do, out of that IP space portion 10.0.0.0 by 16. So out of those 16 portions, I have to allot some portion to these subnets. So if I further divide, so if I take from that 16 portion, I've taken 24th portion of that 16. 10.0.0.0 slash 24. So out of this 16 portion of the VNet, what that subnet has done, it has taken this much of space, and inside this there are 250 IPs available, and that all calculation is done by the networking softwares, which is set up by the persons who develop all this. Okay, so here was 65,000 counts. You can create many subnets inside a virtual network. Then there is a subnet which is created for our virtual machine, and see 10.0.0.24, and it is having 250 IPs here. Now, if I see connected devices, so this is the network interface card, which is connected to the virtual machine. Now, if I go to the virtual machine, this is my virtual machine. So I have deleted the public IP because it charges. So let me create one public IP here. Okay. So in the networking part, you can see public IP address, private IP address. So private IP address, I told you, is by default, right? And if you can see, I told you 0.0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. they are reserved, but 0.4, from 0.4 it's not reserved. So see, it has given me 10.0.0.4. You are getting what I'm saying, right? Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 0.0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 are reserved. 0.255 is reserved. So it has given me started from 0.4. Similarly, if I create different VMs inside this network, so it will, if I created 4 VMs, or if I create a virtual machine scale set, then it will allocate the IP as 10.0.0.4, 10.0.0.5, 10.0.0.6, 10.0.0.0.7, like this. It will allocate the IPs one by one. If I create a virtual machine scale set, then if there are 3 VMs, it will create like that. If there are 5 VMs, then one by one it will create. Okay, so this is a private IP address, and this is the virtual network and the subnet, which is attached to this virtual machine. And this is attached, if I go to the networking part of this virtual machine, this is attached to a network interface card. Now, if I go to this network interface card, see, attached to the virtual machine, it will give you the name and the network security group. Okay, if I go to the IP configuration, see, it has taken that default subnet 10.0.0/24, and 250 free IP addresses are available with this. Can be associated to network interface. Now, using a network interface, I can connect different VMs. So see, this is my VM private IP address, which is attached to this NIC. Now, it's not like that I cannot create another virtual machine with this network interface card. I can create a virtual machine. So see, here it is given. This is IP configuration 1, which is for my primary VM. Okay. Now, if I go and create, I can create a IP config 2. I can choose.
So yesterday we were discussing, right? Now we are using IPv6. But here we use IPv4.
See, IPv4, these are protocols. Okay, you can see accordingly. So IPv4 provides you a limited space. Okay, but if you want an accelerated networking, you can go for IPv6 also, because IPv6 is something like that which will never finish. They have that much of IP space with them. Okay, so it's not to worry. You can go for IPv4 also, IPv6 also. That is up to your choice. As of now, it is showing IPv4 by default. You cannot choose, because when I created a virtual network, when I was creating a virtual machine, I have selected IPv4. That's why here we cannot choose, because it is by default with the virtual network. So if you want to go and create in the IPv6 network, then you have to definitely go to the in the virtual network, and you have to create it like that with IPv6.
Okay. So in practice, both are in use, right? Okay.
Yes, both are definitely, both are in use. Okay. So what happens in the IPv4, the address space is limited, you see. Limited. Okay. So it may be in like thousands or lakhs or crores, maybe. That is finished. So that's why they come up with the improvement of this IPv4. You can say they have improved that protocol and named it IPv6. So maybe they have some different configuration for IPv6. So have you done that IP config? If you can do your IP config in your systems, if you open the command prompt and do an IP config, right?
Yeah, we have done.
Yes.
So there you will find a IPv4 also with your NIC, IPv6 also,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So you have that means your NIC network interface card in your physical system is having both the capability. Okay, you can attach a network with an for like network with a protocol having IPv4 also, IPv6 also.
So where will we use the IPv6 and where will we use the IPv4? Is there any?
So IPv4, it's not like that where we will be using. It's all depends up to your network, how much vast your network is. So if you are having some very big company MNC or like 10 lakh employees, 20 lakh employees, then you have to use that network only, like IPv6. If I am having 25 employees, 30 employees, then I don't have any need for IPv6 because IPv4 can only accommodate me that much of IP range. So I created a virtual network. Okay, since there is a project of mine and it's inside a virtual network, and that virtual network is providing me 65,536 addresses, right? So do I have a need for IPv6? No.
Yeah.
So here you can add different IP config, and there is a when we were creating a VM, so there was a option, or you can say a setting for accelerated networking. You guys have created the VM, right?
Yes.
Accelerated networking. So that accelerated networking is nothing but by default you can do what you can do. You can create a network interface card, and you can have one VM also attached to different network interface card. So say if there is an issue with your one network, so you will be having another NIC for providing you the network from this VNet. So you can have different NICs here, one NIC, two NIC, and you can manage to connect that NICs to one VM. So that is the service is provided by Azure. Now we can also do this with our physical. But then what we have to do, we have to accommodate that chips and all for NIC, and we have to maintain that. So if there are limited slots here in my personal machine, and I cannot fit it in that cabinet, then there will be a difficulty. Okay, so but here it's all, you can say, virtual, as this is a virtual network. So they must be having some settings in their you can say servers or data centers they are managing. Okay, now there is also one thing. There are, for services, there are availability zones. Now this subnet doesn't comes under any availability zone. It is across availability zone. So if I have an availability zone 1, then availability zone 2, so maybe my virtual machine is divided in the availability zones. I choose 1, 2, 3, but subnet is out of that boundary, out of the availability zone. Okay, so this works till here, till VNet, but subnet is out of that boundary. Subnet can be available in availability zone 1, availability zone 2, as well as in the availability zone 3. So like you guys have to remember all these concepts. Okay, when you will be working on some project, or you got some request to create a virtual network, then what you can do, if you are creating some virtual machine, so you can notice that you can attach a virtual machine to different network interface cards. Okay, and you can also have one network interface card connected to having different IP configurations, means connected to different virtual machines. Now, for yesterday, we saw how these IPs are. So, Muat, you were saying yesterday that you are confused with binary calculations or something like that.
Yeah, because first time I saw, well, like how to calculate it.
So this is
New
nothing.
thing for me. That's
This is nothing, but just what you are having your address in English language, right? The computer runs in the binary. Okay, it accepts binary. So what these guys did, they have those binaries because there is only one language which is binary, and that binary is having only two, you can say, numbers or digits. That is 0 and other number is 1. Between 0 and 1, you have to play your game. So what these guys did, they converted into octal. And so if you have learned about some digital electronics, then you may have learned about these things. So like 0, we write it as 0.0.0, right? If there is 1, then we write this in the format as 0.0.1. If someone has done MCA or engineering or anything, then they must have gone through these things. Then for 2, you can write it as 0.1.0. Then for 3, you can write it as 1.0.0. So this is how, if you open in the Google number to binary conversion, then you can see all these tables here. Then how to convert from binary to decimal, binary to octal, binary to hexadecimal. These all conversions have the formula. You can find it in Google. They can provide you, like you will find n number of links for this in Google. So this all we learned in maybe I have learned in my engineering class. So that's why I know all these basics, because I've done my engineering in digital communication only.
Okay.
So that's why I know all these things. So what they did, they converted into octal. Okay, these binary numbers. So there are 8 zeros. For 1, there are 8. Then 2, for there are 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now for creating that address, this is octet 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. Now what they are doing, they are converting from binary to decimal, because system understands binary and we understand digital. We cannot mug up these things, right? How many zeros are there? Then 1, 2, 3, 4. How can I mug up all these things like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0? I'll not able to learn. I want to visit some website that must be having some IP, and I cannot read it in binary because that will be way difficult to remember, right? So that's why they are converting that binary instruction which is given to the computer, then computer is giving to you in the decimal form. So they are converting it to the decimal. So when this is converted to decimal, so formula for converting it to decimal is that each 0 is multiplied by 2 to the power. So first one is multiplied by 2 to the power 0, second is 2 to plus, second 2 to the power 0, third 2 to the power, 1, 2 to the power 2, 2 to the power 3, last 0 will be multiplied by 2 to the power 7. And these all will give you 0 because these are zeros. But in case of 1, it will give you 255. So starting from 0.0.0.0 till 255.255.255, these many IP addresses you can have, which is defined by the networking system, whatever system they have created. And calculation of that IP is done by this calculation, what I've told you. Okay. Now, here in the open networking, you have seen this class A, this much, class B, it can accommodate till this range, class C from 192, and from the open network only. So, see, for IP space, there are public IP and private IP. But if no, okay. So, public IP and private IP. So, public IP is by your choice. You can create public IP, but private IP you have to create. Sorry, private IP is default. And that also comes from the open network. So, and 10.0.0 is reserved for private. So, they have not used in 1, 2, or 3. They have. So, here also in this range, 10 is reserved. So, 10.0.0.0, 10 255. And also they have not used till 255. What now, when a virtual network is created, you have to choose in that range, you have to choose some part of that range. So when we create a virtual network, like here the virtual network is created, we have chosen 16 parts of that range we have chosen. And inside that 16 parts, there are 65,536 IPs. So see, if I go till 255 part of this, then how many IPs are present? I don't know. We have to calculate them. Lakhs of IPs or crores of IPs, IP addresses. And that is limited. Count is limited with IP4. Maybe it is in lakhs, billions, millions, but for IPv6 it is limitless. There are no, as of now, they have not done any count for that for IPv6. But yeah, for IPv4 it's limited. And again, it depends which protocol you have to choose. It depends on your organization, and it depends totally up to you. So I have chosen IPv4 for creating a virtual machine, and it only is giving me that virtual network is providing me 65,536 addresses. That is way enough for me. I will not create that much of machines or that much of resources. Then class A. In class A, there is a network. First part is network. So it is reaching to the network. 10 is the network. Rest are host. Similarly, in B, first to our network means you have to reach out to that. Now, if I say, this is very important. 10.0.0.0/24. Now, this is assigned to my subnet. Now, there are different resources which will be assigned out of this 24. Maybe starting from 10.0.0.4, which is my virtual machine private IP address. Virtual machine private IP. Now, what it will do, it will go, this is my subnet. Inside this subnet, there are, say, it is divided into 24. So it will create some like 250 IP addresses and 250 resources. So 1, 2, 3. Now this is fourth one. So what I'm doing when I'm putting 10.0.0.4, this is the 10th network. This is the 10th network. And host, what is host? My machine. Fourth machine. Okay. Fourth. So it will go to the 10th network. It will go to the 10th network and it will reach out to this machine. That
If
is
you have
called,
five, you put. If you
that
have
is,
five, you put 0.5.
pardon?
If you have five machines, you put 10, 0,
Correct,
0.5.
correct. Fifth machine. So
I see.
similarly, if I create say this is a virtual machine scale set. Now I create a virtual machine scale set on one go. Okay, I can choose 3 machines. This is VMSS, virtual machine scale set. So in virtual machines, I get a option to create 3 virtual machines, 5 virtual machines, 6 virtual machines. And with this virtual machines, I will create a VNet and a subnet. Now, if the subnet is created for this virtual machine scale set, then it must be having those IPs, right? So as you know that 0, 1, 2, 3, 255 are all reserved, right? So it starts with fourth. So what it can do, it can give .4 to this, then .5 to this, then .6 to this, then .7 to this.
Sorry
Now,
for interrupt. Sorry for interrupt. So
mhm.
each machine has the same subnet number or is different number?
No, this each machine will be connected to the same subnet only. Same
I
subnet.
see.
All
Okay.
these machines are inside this subnet only. Now,
Okay.
if I am creating another subnet, then maybe I cannot create now with this 10.0.0.0/24. So I need to use another one. So what I'll go, I'll do 10.1.0/24. Now with the combination of 1, like for the host, so I've used 1 with 0/24. Similarly, you can have 1 here and you can have 0 here. Then you can have 0 here. Then you can have 1 here, 1 here, then 0 here, /24. That much of combinations you can create. So this will be one subnet. This will be one subnet. So I cannot create another subnet with this same range. So what I have to do? I have to create like this. So when you will go and create some subnet, so it will provide you. So if you go by default, it will say, okay, this is not available. If you select this, it will say, okay, this is taken by or consumed by another subnet. So what you have to do? You have to go with other. So if you put this, it will take. This will, yeah. So it will take this one. Similarly, I can create another subnet with 10.1.0.0/24. I can create another subnet with 10.1.1.0/24. Those many combinations you can create for a subnet, out of your VNet IP space. What was my VNet IP space? 10.0.0.0/16. That was my virtual network. Now with this IP space, I cannot create another virtual network because these many spaces are gone with this combination 0.0.0.0/16. So I can go with some different 10.0.1.0/16. I can create a virtual network with this combination.
So, you mean like if we required suppose multiple virtual machines.
Mhm.
So in that case, we required one VNet, and inside the one VNet, we have to create multiple subnets.
Yeah, you can create multiple subnets inside a VNet.
Yeah. So every like one VNet have the multiple virtual machine.
Mhm.
So every virtual machine have the it should like a unique subnet or like a common
No,
subnet. Yeah.
no. In a subnet, you can create many virtual machines because I show you that there are 250 IP address is available there, right? In that subnet. So you can create 250 resources over there.
Okay. So when we required like a multiple subnet.
Multiple subnets when you require. So if say you have to isolate, there is some other project or any other thing,
Okay.
right? So you don't want those IPs, you don't want, or say if what there are two projects, I can create virtual machines here, but that subnet, so here is the internet. Okay, this is the internet.
Okay.
Now this subnet is not directly connected to the internet. This is not connected to the internet. For connecting it to the internet, you have to provide application gateway. Application gateway. Without application gateway, this subnet is not connected to the internet, and this subnet must be having a public IP. Without public IP and an application gateway, you can not connect this subnet to the internet. So that's why these subnets are isolated. Now within a virtual network, what happens? Within a virtual network, maybe someone creates a public IP also, right? And that is accessible to the internet. So that boundary you cannot maintain for a VNet, but for a subnet, you can maintain that boundary, because by default, when you create a subnet, it comes with private IP. You cannot, until unless you attach an application gateway with this subnet or allocate an IP to this subnet, no one can connect this subnet to the internet. That is completely isolated.
Okay. So inside subnet, we need to create a VM, and in that case, suppose we have a multiple users for the same VM.
See, this is a VNet. This is virtual network. Virtual network. Inside this virtual network, you can create multiple subnets. Multiple subnets. But those multiple subnets will be under this range, IP space range, which is provided by VNet. So VNet will provide you IP space range. And those subnets should be under that range. Subnet. So these are subnet, and here is a VM. Any resource. Here also there is a VM. And these are having different address spaces. 10.0.0.0/24. This one might be having 10.0.1.0/24. Similarly, other also.
Okay. So suppose you have a subnet one, and inside subnet one we have a two virtual machines, as you show
Correct.
here.
Mhm.
So both virtual machines have the unique IP address, or like same subnet one IP address using? Or the
No.
both?
No. Subnet is having range. Subnet will not have IP address. Subnet will have range by default.
Okay. This is the range.
Yes. It will have a range, and within this range, you have to create these resources. So you will
IP
not,
addresses.
now here you will not allocate the IP. System will automatically allocate the IP to the resources using some routing algorithm. The system must be using some routing algorithm, And using
Right.
that algorithm, it will allocate different IPs to these systems inside a subnet within this
Right.
range.
Right. When we create the virtual machine, then it's provided automatically
Correct.
one IP.
And
Address.
if you want to access this machine over the internet, then you must be having a public IP. Now you got.
Yeah.
If you want to access this machine over the internet, you should have a public IP.
Okay. So by default, it having like a private IP.
Yes. Now there are two things here. So I don't want anyone to access this virtual machine over the internet, but I want this machine can access the internet. Means
Right.
there should be no inbound traffic, but I want outbound traffic. So for that purpose, there is one more thing you must have like if you have listened that thing, there is a net gateway. Net gateway. Anyone listen about that? Net gateway.
It's giving the internet to the subnet, right?
Correct. So VM
And
can
AWS.
access using net gateway. VM can access the internet. VN can access the internet. VN can access this internet, but no one can access the VM over the internet. Incoming traffic is not there. This is prohibited using net gateway. VM can use, but no one can use this VM. So
This is the default. This is the default.
yeah,
Default thing. So yeah.
net gateway doesn't come by default. Public IP doesn't come by default. Default is just a private IP. By default, you will get only private IP with that virtual machine.
Is
Private
there
IP.
any possible to control the IP, changing the IPs
No.
as
You
we
cannot.
as we wish?
You cannot. No, you cannot. You can do that with public IP. Still, what you can do, you can create two types of public IPs: static IP and dynamic IP. Now, I want my IP not to change every time. Then I'll go with static public IP. And if I don't need any, like I'll stop the system, then what will happen if I create a dynamic IP? Then Azure will release that IP. If I created a dynamic public IP, so if this IP, say this IP is attached to some system, this IP is dynamic public IP is attached to one system. Now, when I shut down this system, what Azure will do? Azure will release this public IP. But if I have static IP, then I have a choice. Okay, I want this IP to be attached to my system. Then if I stop my virtual machine, then also your IP will be attached to your system only. It will not go anywhere. So that is the choice you have. But you don't have the choice to ask which IP you want. You got that, right?
So that means if in the private, if your static IP means we have to pay separately, right?
Yes. So for static IP, there are some charges. Like I don't know if $3 per month or something like that. $3 per month. Now it will charge as it is, but for dynamic, it will charge pay as you go. Means the number of hours for which the IP is there, they will charge you for they will charge you in per hour basis for dynamic IP.
better to choose static IP.
Pardon?
It's better to choose static IP.
So if you go here and you create a public IP here, so say here I go and create a public IP. So I choose a public IP address.
Test RG is the VM, right? Test RG you have selected.
Mm-hmm.
Test RG.
No, no,
RG is
test RG is resource group.
the source group. Okay.
Yes. This is
And
public
after
IP
that-
address. If I go and create this public IP address, this is under free trial subscription, my resource group, Central India, and name of this IP, my public IP. Okay. Now I can choose IP for V4 or V6. Then I can choose a standard or a basic. Okay. So a public IP SKU must match the SKU of the load balancer. If you have the load balancer, then you should have a standard or a basic load balancer. Means there are networking protocols. What networking? There can be a layer 4 load balancer. And there can be a layer 7 load balancer. Now, anyone have studied OSI model? OSI model, layer 4, layer 7. So there was a OSI model which we studied in our colleges or so there are 7 layers in this. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
So this fourth layer was the network layer. This fourth layer was the network layer. And then fifth, sixth, and last one is seventh layer. And this seventh layer, what is the seventh layer? Can anyone tell me? Application layer.
Yeah.
Application layer. So there are two type of load balancer. One is the network load balancer, another one is the application load balancer. Based on this OSI model. So similarly, you have public IPs too. Layer 4 public IP, layer 7 public IP. So you can choose for a standard or a basic. Okay. I'll choose for a basic, then I go and create. Validation is passed. I'll create a IP. Now see, it's a static IP. Okay. It's a static IP. I can choose it to be a dynamic. I'll show you once this is created.
Which is standard gives you dynamic?
Pardon?
If you choose standard, they'll give you a dynamic or
No, it's not from that. If I go to here and go to the IP configuration. So as of now, this is my IP address. There is no DNS name attached to IP as of now. And this is not attached to any VM also. Okay. If I go to configuration, see, after creating, I can choose it to be a dynamic IP or a static IP. After creation, I can go to the configuration. I can choose it to be a dynamic IP and I can save. But if I choose the static IP, it will not get deleted. And I can choose a DNS name to this. My public IP. Drag and save. Now there is a DNS name for my IP. And if I want to access my machine, I can access through this DNS name also. But
So
first,
go
first,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, first I have to associate. Now I cannot access my VM as of now. Why? Because my VM NIC is not attached to any public IP. I told you private IP is by default, but public IP we have to create if we want to access that machine over the internet. So I will associate it with network interface, and network interface is this one, which is for my virtual machine. I click OK.
Good.
It's a different so okay.
You heard in basic.
Mm-hmm. This and properties overview. Okay. Now my machine was having it was not on a basic network or a load balancer. So that's why it did not attach to that VM, because you saw there, okay, you want a SKU to be upgraded, okay, because I created this public IP in a basic network. So that's why it was not able to attach to that virtual machine, because my virtual machine was on a standard network. That's why. So you have to maintain that thing. If your virtual machine is on that particular network, if you have chosen a SKU for your machine in the networking part, so when you create a virtual machine, there is a basic part, then networking part, then advanced part. So there, if you have chosen in the networking, you have chosen basic or advanced. It depends on that. So there I choose standard in the networking part of my virtual machine. But here in the public IP, when I created, I chose basic. So that's why I was not able to connect that. Okay. So as I upgraded my public IP to the standard network, it gets attached to my virtual machine. Now my virtual machine can be accessed using this DNS name, which is assigned to this public IP.
What is different between basic and standard? Is there any issues to connect with the associate with the machine?
See, in the basic and standard, there's just like routing protocols which are followed, right? So basic routing protocol or a standard routing protocol, that is totally up to dependent upon the system only. Okay, but
Okay.
the key is, if you choose basic, you go with the basic. If you choose standard, then go with the standard.
Okay.
Main key is that. Okay. So
Abhishek, where is the option like standard? Suppose we want to choose
so
a standard.
when I was creating the IP, you have seen that it was given here. But if you have created a VM, like you go and create a VM, there in the networking part, there will be a SKU for basic and a standard.
Yes, the standard. Yes.
Yeah.
SKU option was there.
Yes.
And suppose so in this case, we don't have a tag standard, so we can't access this VM from different locations.
No, until unless any public IPS is attached, you will not be able to access. So for public IP to be get attached to this, you should have a standard public IP. If your VM has selected a networking as standard.
Could we test this scenario? Like
Pardon?
suppose I have one VM and want to access from two or three locations.
Mhm.
When we test this,
I'm not getting you. Come again.
yeah, actually I have suppose we have one VM
Mhm.
and the three users. I want to create a users for the same VM.
Mhm.
We want to the VM from three different locations.
Mhm.
So in that case, we can test this or not in three accounts. Like
Yeah, you can definitely connect. No worries.
we can test. No? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I will create this scenario today. I will
Mhm.
check with tomorrow.
Okay.
with you.
Okay. So see, now this is a VNet, this is a subnet, this is machine. Okay, and we saw NIC also. What is NIC? Network Interface Card. Now, to access this machine or to access the application inside this machine, you must set some rules. So, you must set some rules. And where those rules can be set? In an NSG, Network Security Group. So, there is a Network Security Group. This is a network security group, and in this network security group you can set the rules. Now if I show here network security group, this is my basic VM NSG, and as I have like installed the Nginx server or a web server inside that machine, so I've set the priority 300 for SSH. SSH means to log in. So this port should be opened for us to go inside the virtual machine. Then after that, I'll give the priority to HTTP because I need to access that web server, and that is on port 80. And what is the protocol? TCP/IP protocol. Now here source and destination. Now you can choose source and destination, which to allow and which to not. So if you edit this inbound network rules, if I edit anything, yes. Provide a single port, a port range such as 1024 to this, or so source port range you can provide here. Source port range you can provide here, and destination. So you can filter the IP addresses here. If I put an IP address to which now I am having a virtual machine skill set. So if I am having that virtual machine in a skill set, or I am having in some subnet, and I want all the users from those subnet to access this server, web server, then what I'll do, I'll give that range, that subnet range. So all the resources inside that subnet can access my web server through HTTP protocol. Can access through HTTP protocol. So I can give an IP address also, a particular IP address for some machine 10.0.0.4. So only this machine can access. Or I can give range. So these machines from this subnet, from range this, can access my web server in my virtual machine. So you can choose the port on which port they can come and access, from port range this to this, and from which IP address they can access, or from which range of IP address they can access, which protocol, using which protocol they can access. Everything you can set here in the rules. These are called inbound rules. Similarly, there are outbound rules. What your machine can do from inside the machine, what you can do, that will be in the outbound rules. So here there are only two protocols as of now which is allowed. One is VNet outbound, another one is internet outbound. Means internet outbound, I can access internet from inside the machine. If I choose this, so as of now this is I have to make another rule, because this comes by default. These three things comes by default. You cannot add it. Three things. Okay. VNet outbound, by default they give internet access. You have to stop this by setting one more rule. Okay. Here also they have given three rules. Deny all they have given. So when they have given deny all and we have not set up an SSH or HTTP, we were not able to access this machine. But when we opened the SSH port 22, we allowed here. Earlier it was deny all, means everything was denied. But we have added one more rule to allow that particular port, means 22 and 80, so that we can connect to the machine and we can access our web server. So that is NSG. So VNet, subnet, NIC, NSG, these are all part of network. Now, if we talk about other things in the network, as earlier you were asking that point to site, site to site connections. So Azure Virtual Networking is all about that how isolated it is, internet communication, how can you do. So I told you that you have to assign a public IP address, then how you can communicate between different resources. So for communicating between resources, you need some methods, right? So what are these kinds of connectivity or methods? Like point to point, site to site, and Azure Express Route. Now here in point to site, you can see, if you can see this diagram, everyone can see. Hello, can everyone see this diagram?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
in point to site VPN, you are having here one site, okay, or one client computer. Now from this client computer, you are having a VPN gateway. Using this VPN gateway, it will connect to, say, Azure site. This is an Azure site, and there are different applications. Maybe it a Microsoft 365 or any other application, or any virtual machine or a Linux machine. So you can connect through from one point or a client computer. The connection is originated from that client computer and using a SSTP tunnel. Using a SSTP tunnel. So there is a protocol SSTP. Just a second. Now this is a VPN gateway here, and if I tell you this thing, SSTP, Secured Socket Tunneling Protocol. So this is using a SSTP channel. So say this is the channel. This is the channel. And this side, there's a VPN client. VPN client. There was a VPN gateway, right? There's a client computer. Now there is a handshake connectivity between these. Means there are packets. So there are different packets it will send. These packets. These packets. These packets. Sorry. Different packets. It will send the data in the form of packets. And there is a HTTP request. This is the request. Inside this request, there are packets. These are packets. Data is sent in the form of packets, and there is a handshake. Handshake between these packets. Handshake through a SSL, Secured Socket Layer, and TLS. This will go here. This is a HTTP request, and when it go like this, there is a SSTP server. Now, before going to the site, Azure site or anywhere, or a virtual network or a subnet, before that, on that site, there will be a SSTP server. SSTP. This SSTP server will make sure, okay, whether the client is same with that IP or not. So this client will have some HTTP request through the IP of this client, and this STP server is having some rules, and someone will like allow on that subnet whether when he's setting the NSG rules, he will allow that particular IP, right? And this will SSTP server will verify, okay, the connection is okay, and it will send the request back to the client. And this all happens through this SSTP tunnel. This SSTP tunnel. So in this way, a point-to-site connection is established. Point-to-site connection between two resources. And this is always initiated by client. This is always initiated by this client. So this is point-to-site virtual private network using SSTP tunnel. Then site-to-site connection.
Just for interrupt, actually. We need to go office, so it's already 10 around. So can we stop or like can we check this tomorrow?
Yeah. So tomorrow everyone can join, na?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I will do that.
More you can join tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll join tomorrow at 8:30 or 9 as you will decide. Like if you guys want to join at 8:30 then 8:30. If you say at 9 then 9.
Abhishek, if you provide, Abhishek, if you provide
Is it 9 a.m. or 10
tomorrow
p.m.?
class on Monday, can you
8
skip
8
tomorrow
in the
class
8
then?
sorry 9 in the morning, right? Indian Standard Time.
Okay. I have a class tomorrow with the data scientist tomorrow.
When you have a
Yes,
class?
I'm sorry?
At what time you have a class?
Like the same as this time, because in the weekends, Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
I'm after I'm done with you, I have a class with them.
Okay. So
Abhishek, is it possible at afternoon, like from your end? If afternoon, then so morning we can practice and again in afternoon
see,
we can, because Saturday.
I can I can do the class. I don't have any issues with that. But you guys decide at what time we can do that.
Yeah, we can check like if everybody is fine in afternoon.
I'm
Abhishek,
okay with this
actually,
time, only
if you-
just
no,
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Abhishek, actually, I have one more concern. Like,
Abhishek,
Anyone having issues early morning 7?
No, 7 is too early, Abhishek, on Saturday.
7 or 7:30.
Abhishek, can we keep it at same time tomorrow?
Yeah,
See,
8:30.
Yes.
so 8:30.
Yeah, 8:30 is fine.
Yeah, I'm also fine in morning. If not, then afternoon.
Is it 8:30 Indian time or what?
Yes, IST.
Yes.
8:30 a.m. IST. AM.
AM?
Yes, AM. IST. Morning time. This time
So
only.
what's-
This time only. At what we connect daily.
Okay, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, then we'll meet tomorrow at 8:30.
yeah, Abhishek, actually,
Okay.
I have one more concern. Like, for exam related, you have any like question set or like you have any provider test for that?
So for exam point of view,
Before
I'll
before
provide
going
you
to
some.
exam.
I'll give you some links. Okay. I'll give you some links, some dumps. So there in those links you can go and there are maybe 200, 300 questions. Go through all those questions and just give the certification you will go through. No worries.
Is it 900 we can give after that?
Yes.
And one thing like I have discussed with tomorrow with Sri.
Mhm.
Like so she told like she will provide the content, the study material.
Okay.
So she not provided that. So
Then
we
ask
require
her.
also
She will give you some.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Ask her. Okay. She will give you.
Thank you.
So means you can have the study material, no worries. But your concepts may be cleared here, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You can have the study material, no worries. Okay, then
Thank you.
tomorrow we'll meet at
Thank
8:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye everyone.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.